Thank you. Hello. My name is Jimmy Hazelwood. As Ryan said, I'm a developer on the JIRA team. I'm going to talk to you a bit today about how our team works, and particularly how it works using these squads. So, about my team. We're the result of the coming together in May this year of JIRA Transformers and JIRA Agile, in a kind of a Brady Bunch-esque meeting of the minds. We were united with a common mission. Seeks to make a real difference by making it easy, fun, and rewarding to do something. Something else. Teams to, oh, that's not good. Moving right along. So what I'm trying to say is my team's work is a little bit classified, and my team's name sounds a lot like my team's work. So let's just call them my team. To be honest, that project-centric stuff you saw at the end of the keynote, that's what we're working on. But that was my best joke, so I left it in. So here we are, this big team of 20 people. Some of us have been in teams this size before, and we knew things would get messy in a team this big. We were wondering how we would manage the communication overhead, the division of labor. Did we really want to have a 20-person stand-up every morning? Not really. But Tokes, our team lead, was reminded of a video about Spotify's engineering culture. You might have seen it. And in particular, the way they split their teams up into what they called squads. And he thought, maybe this will work for us. And thus were born the titular squads. Jimmy's Jesters, Chris's Cobras, Slavek's Sirens, Michael's Manatees, and Dave's Devils. Now, the name of these squads are complete nonsense. But coincidentally, and with a bit of coercion, they map pretty well to some principles about how our team works. So the Cobras employ fast, targeted strikes. Dave's Devils automate the details. Jimmy's Jesters juggle their schedule. Slavek's Sirens get the message out there. And Michael's Manatees maintain their humanity. I said it took a bit of coercion. Oh, and there's one I almost forgot. We have a rotating bug fix squad, which just serves to highlight that, like every product, every process has its bugs. So I'll be sharing some things that we're still figuring out along the way. So the Cobra represents strike forces or squads or micro teams, or whatever you want to call them, who employ these fast targeted strikes. So what makes them fast, firstly? Well, they're lightweight. Spotify has squads of about 8. We're about 3 to 4 people in size. With that reduced size comes reduced communication overhead. It's quite easy to know what 3 other developers are doing at any one time. And then the squad captains just manage the communication between squads. Another thing that makes us fast is when we've finished a feature, we don't disband and reform. We just fasten our collective fangs on the next big thing, so to speak. And we continue to benefit from the rapport we've already built and hopefully continue to build. No more storming, forming, norming phases. So it's worked pretty well, but there will be bugs. Although the dev speed, the reduced communication overhead, and the rapport aspects have been working really well for us, one thing we're still trying to figure out is division of labor. And I think the biggest example of this for us is, say we have purely back-end work left on a particular theme of work our squad is on. What do we do with a pure front-end developer? Do we lend them to another squad? Do we insist they broaden their skill set by picking up a back-end type story? We're still not sure what the best answer for this is. But on to Dave's Devils. So the old saying goes, the devil's in the details, meaning attention to detail can really save your hide. Knowing things like, when's the right time to merge into master? How do I release a canonical release of our product? That kind of thing. But no one really wants to be in charge of enforcing all of this when there's code to write, right? Thankfully, there are apps for that. Here are a few that we use. So to take you through how our squads and our team uses the Atlassian stack to automate away the details, here's a day in the life of a jester. Oh dear. Looks like some code we wrote has broken the JIRA Agile board. We better get on that right away. Now, it would be tempting to just code up a quick fix and push it right to master like it never happened, right? Well, wrong. We have this saying in our team that master's golden, meaning only code which is fully tested and ready to deploy should make its way onto master. And so we've rightly set up Stash to make sure that happens. And no one's allowed to push straight to master. The way, as you saw in the keynote, to do that now is just to click this Create Branch button. By the way, feel free to jot down these URLs now, or you'll find them on the slideshare later, and you can follow those for more instructions on how to actually set these up. So we accept the very sensible defaults, check that master's green there. Then we'll read clone it in source tree with a single click. We get to work coding up our solution, and once QA is happy, We raise our pull request from source tree with another click. Oh, what's this? It says we can't merge. It's not that there are going to be merge conflicts. It's that we've set up our stash to make sure that we're only allowed to merge when we have at least 2 approvals and when all the builds agree. So when we've met those criteria, the robot, as you heard about in the keynote as well, takes care of the issue transitioning for us. And we can see pull request is done, so the issue is done. It's merged into master, master's gone green, and we can create and deploy our release with a single click. Atlassian tools save the day. Does that sound a bit ideal? Maybe so. There are bugs in our automation too. One example, apps can lead to mishaps when enough automation becomes too much. And the key example of this for us was playing around with the auto unapproval plugin for Stash. The idea is a good one in principle. It removes all approvals anytime the developer pushes a new change to the pull request. However, we found that often this left developers scared to push any change at all, even if it was just incorporating feedback that an approver suggested or making a small reformatting change. So in this case, and others like it, it was a matter of finding a balance between enough automation and too much. Where automation got in the way and the answer was obvious, we trusted developers to do the right thing. And by virtue of the scale of our operation and the number of moving parts, automation sometimes can be painful. And this is particularly true for us of our integrated testing. We don't have any silver bullet answers. It's really just a case of chipping away at the unreliable tests and the pain points and continuously improving this integration of ours. There's a lot more to say about that and about workflows, and you've come to the right place. So there's a couple of talks on tomorrow morning, unfortunately, at the same time, so you may have to split up and compare notes with your buddy. But I can particularly recommend Wojciech's talk on automated testing. It comes recommended by none other than Uncle Bob himself. But it's time for my squad's mascot to talk to you a bit about how to juggle your schedule like a jester. Excuse me. That's questions like, what are we doing now? What are we going to do next? And when are we actually going to get this done? And the principle here is using JIRA Agile to help us lift our eyes off what our hands are doing onto the flaming chainsaws and knives that we have in flight, like any good jester has to do. So the answer to what we're doing now is quite straightforward. It's what's on our Agile board. And the way we do this is all our squads run their sprints in sync, and we have all our stories up on the board. But we've labeled our issues, and so with these quick filters here, we can drill down into our individual squad's work. So that gives you a big high-level picture or a fine-grained idea of what just your squad's doing. So fair enough, what are we doing next? And so for each of these synchronized sprints, we have a back-to-back planning meeting. It would be pretty cumbersome for all of the developers to be there for all 5 squads' planning meetings. And so we come in one after the other, but presiding over this meeting are QAs, dev managers, and product managers who can easily spot and flag any potential clashes between what the different squads are doing, or freeing up the squads themselves to get back to work. And before the planning meeting, we have what we call a boardwalk, which is essentially where product managers take the principal product manager through each of the backlogs to make sure that the issues are still correctly prioritized and to make sure there's nothing obsolete still in there. So I left the tricky one for last. When will we be done? If you work according to epics, and if you estimate most of your stories, then JIRA Agile's epic burn down chart can give you a pretty good idea of when you might be done. Sometimes we use this, sometimes we just count up the story points we've used in the last couple of sprints. And as for how you estimate, here's a method we use. Rather than using the blind bidding of planning poker, we do what I call inverted planning poker, where we lay out all the stories written on cards and group them according to their relative size. We find doing this comparison helps us get a bit better picture than just the blind bid approach, but the latter might work better for you if you tend to have influences in your estimating meetings. But even the best jesters drop the ball sometimes. We have our own bugs too. So unnecessary work that was completed on time and according to the estimate is still unnecessary work. And sometimes developers can race ahead of the designers and product managers and end up doing work which may be well done, but irrelevant nevertheless. So our founder's advice, and I suppose what we keep asking ourselves is, what's our boss, what's our manager worried about? If we keep this question in mind, it'll help us more quickly spot work which is irrelevant or not the best thing to do next. If we don't know the answer, that's a good sign we need to approach our very approachable product manager and talk about what the way forward is from here. And everyone knows that estimating is hard. So instead of pretending that we can get perfect estimates, we optimize for these slippages and uncertainties. with increments and feature toggles. So incremental delivery is a well-known practice of just releasing something feature by feature to avoid the risk of a big bang release. But we go further than this, and like Spotify, we have feature toggles, or dark features as we call them. These allow us to merge in pieces of a feature at a time, but leave it switched off by these dark features until we're ready to show them to the customer. Our infrastructure even lets us just show a subset of customers this feature, so we can collect usage statistics or even feedback. So, onto the sirens. Sirens are the masters of effective communication. As soon as you hear a siren, the takeaway is obvious. Get out of there or you're going to have a bad time. Likewise, we try to keep in mind what toes might be stepped on and how's the team doing in general by surfacing the important things and sharing the knowledge we've gained by cross-pollination. So, talking about what toes might be stepped on. As I said before, our back-to-back planning meeting helps us show inter-squad dependencies and conflicts. Also, we use information radios like wallboards. Yours will look different to ours, but we show things like what builds have failed, what versions of our plugin are in what environments, and what the performance profile of the products are with the new version of our plugin to make sure that we're not going to slow down or break any other teams. And your team will look different from mine, but our team has weekly captain stand-ups to make sure that in our haste to complete our own squad's work, we haven't diverged or forgotten what the other squads are doing. So, we've got 3 more things to say about staying in sync, and all 3 are pull requests. So if your team doesn't do some kind of code review, I highly recommend it. We find that buggy code which doesn't take into account all the possible cases, APIs which you won't be able to consume or will not be compatible with your own code, or just things that can be done better. All of these tend to be exposed in the harsh light of a pull request. So yes, try pull requests. And also a story about cross-pollination, as I was saying before. So when the Transformers and JIRA Agile merged, the Transformers people could see that there were some issues with JIRA Agile's CI. There were a lot of unreliable tests which were blocking merges and releases, getting feature value out to customers. And Sergio was even less impressed than the rest of us. And so he suggested a really hardline strategy for dealing with these unreliable tests and posted a blog post about it. This included things like, as soon as an unreliable test was detected, creating a blocker level issue and assigning each week a build overlord whose sole job was to make sure that any of these flaky tests were dealt with. And like we normally say to any suggestion, we said, sure, let's give it a try, see how it goes. And thanks to these changes, our builds now look a lot better, if not perfect. So the question of how we're doing as a team is really about retrospectives. Our first rule about a retrospective is we don't always wait for the retrospective. If there's something that could be done better, or if there's something that's going really well, we flag it straight away in a blog post or just in HipChat. Even so, it's good to have some time set aside to making your team an even better team. Some key ingredients I find are giving ratings. So we give a rating out of 10 on how the sprint's gone, then we average it to get a feel for morale. We each put up our positives and negatives, fairly standard stuff. And then, of course, we assign the highest rated negatives action items to a willing volunteer who will then try and fix things by the next sprint. And no doubt there's other sort of real work which demands your full attention. But it's really worth, while you're there, giving your full attention to talking about how you can make your team better, because that'll really make it something that you want to be a part of in the long run. But there are miscommunications too. And other squads aren't the only people whose toes we might tread on. There are lots of moving parts at Atlassian and points of failure. So we try to watch our steps, so to speak. An example of this was we knew that the Atlassian Connect team would want to integrate with the feature we were building. Rather than building it and waiting for them to complain, we sought them out and had a conversation about what was the best way to go forward developing it, the way that they'd most be able to integrate with. And cross-pollination, sort of open discussion of processes and approaches is good at times, but at other times it can lead to long drawn-out debates on blog posts or pull requests, which can leave people feeling sort of sluggish and irritated, much like actual pollen does for me. And so the answer for that is a lot like the problem, speaking up. So again, a victim to one such long drawn-out pull request debate proposed some new approaches to pull requests. Things like making sure to indicate in your comment whether it was a must-have or just a nice-to-have. And if there was some dispute that arose, mandating face-to-face or video chat resolution of that dispute. rather than a lengthy debate in text. Which leads quite nicely onto my final principle, which is to maintain the humanity. So without great tools, it'll be hard to do your work, but without great culture, probably won't care. And some really great things I think about our culture are these. Firstly, we listen up. If someone has feedback about how we can improve our processes, like those two examples I've shown, normally the first thing we say is, it sounds good, let's give it a try. So we time box it, we experiment, and often we come out of it a better and more effective team. And even if it's feedback about ourselves or our own development, even if it might be hard to take, we do take it on board and we listen. Another thing we do is face up, like I said, in the discussion of the pull request debates. If we have some dispute or just a big discussion to have about our way forward, we prefer to talk it over in person, face to face. We pair up. So if somebody new joins our team, a more experienced developer will take some time, normally a week or two out of their schedule, to pair program with that developer. We've found that this has been really useful. Although it takes some time out of a more experienced developer's schedule, it really pays off dividends in terms of transferring not only skills and knowledge, but culture as well to the newcomer. And lastly, we play up a little bit. I think it's good for every team to have something which is distinctively their team's. Yours will probably be different. But for ours, it's the rapturous and thunderous applause that echoes throughout our entire floor at the conclusion of every Friday afternoon demo, no matter how trivial. And there we are, giving that thunderous applause to a demo. So there are all the principles once again. I hope that in there you found something which you'd like to try out for your team. And more generally, I hope that it's encouraged you to try new things in your team, to find the bugs in your process, and identify those as opportunities for improvement. Thanks very much.